Hello and welcome to the 5-Yard IDP pod with me, Nath Davis. Today we'll be reviewing week 8 and getting you ready for week 9. How's it going, Bren? You all right, mate?
Yeah, getting there. I was suffering with man flu when I recorded up in Scotland last week, and that turned into a sinus infection, as I told Nath before the show. So if I am a bit snuffly and sounding a bit bunged up, then I do apologise in advance. But the gin and tonic remedy, didn't work.
No.
Yeah, well,
Just moves it on, mate.
Yeah, woke up the following morning feeling proper head full of cuddlies. So, but yeah, apart from that, good. Fun weekends. Watch a lot of good games at the weekend. Some surprising results over the last week. So looking forward to it.
So yeah, as I said, it's Tuesday. And I'm letting people know that obviously, we are recording this on Tuesday because it's going out obviously Wednesday. But let you know it's Tuesday because it is trade deadline today, and I thought I would make sure that because there might be some things that we miss, because it's absolutely going crazy at the moment. There's reports coming. There's another one. So if we miss anything, you know that it's not because we have just missed it. It's because we recorded this a day early. So I don't know. How did you get on fantasy wise this week, Bren?
Oh, bad. I've been both Ray Lewis and Lawrence Taylor just obliterated with injuries,
mate.
Yeah,
mine.
It's carnage.
I lost. Listen to this. So our own Rich, I lost to Dynasty Island Rich. I lost to him by 0.98 points.
Oh, VAR on that one, mate.
I know. And in the Ray Lewis League, I lost to Spearman by 3.5 points. So I keep checking just to see if there's any kind of late adjustments, but I think the ship sailed now. So yeah, it was a nightmare. Well, I say it was a nightmare.
I mean, I lost my flex QB and James Winston on top of all the defensive injuries I've got in one of the leagues.
Yeah.
It's just a. Mind you, we're not alone. A lot of teams are being decimated with injuries this season. It's
I know.
and big players as well this year as well. So it's it's got to be hurting. And hey, you just got to
push through.
Yeah, just rejig things, circle around on the waivers a bit. Just do your best, basically. Have a circle.
A circle. But yeah.
So, but yeah, the only saving grace
Chancellor
was
for German Chancellor, isn't it? It's Miracle, right? Anyway,
Miracle, yeah. So, but yeah, right. But I did beat Tom in the home league, so that was only my second win at home league this year. So every cloud.
Right then, before we go much further on this pod, we are, as you know, we're supported by Manscaped. They are our sponsors, and Manscaped are the market leaders in men's below the waist grooming. They've just released the Lawnmower 4.0, which is a fantastic bit of kit. One of the best things about it is the skin safe technology, so you get no nicks on your bits, and you can receive 20% off with the code 5yard at manscaped.com. It really is a game changer in that area, and you are missing out if you do not have one. As I said, you can get 20% off with the code 5yard at manscaped.com. There's also free worldwide shipping, so sort yourself out and get involved. Right, so back onto the football. Bren, you're kicking us off, aren't you? Thursday night football.
I am. Thursday night football. And Jets at Indianapolis. So a few weeks ago, I don't think anyone would have got terribly excited about this game. But off the back of the results at the weekend, I'm quite looking forward to this one, actually.
I've got my Mike White T-shirt on order.
Yeah. So poor old Joe Flacco. But so anyway, the Colts are going to be hurting after that overtime loss to divisional rivals Tennessee. Puts the Titans 6-2 and comfortable on top of the division. Drops the Colts to 3-5. And I really felt sorry for the Colts defense at the weekend. I thought they did enough to they deserved to win that game. Run defense was good. They did a good job containing Derrick Henry. They made some key plays. Someone I've talked about, DeForest Buckner, with a big fourth quarter sack to keep it at 31 apiece. Sadly, all that hard work was pissed away by two awful throws by Carson Wentz, really costly points in the game. And they weren't the only mistakes he made in the game. Some of his decision making was just pretty awful. Top performers, quick mention for poor old Quan Williams at tackle, probably having the game of his career before that knee injury sort of took him out for the game, probably the season by the look of it as well, in the second quarter. Not before he'd racked up over 20 points, to be fair to him, with a sack and 2 QB hits, but sadly the pick was where he did his knee in. Elsewhere, the usual suspects came to play. Kenny Moore, corner, had a real day at the office, 24.5 points, including another pick. Bobby Okereke at linebacker, 17 points. Darius Leonard, also at LB, same again, sort of 17.5 points. DeForest Buckner, as I said, had that key play, not a huge point score, but 13. Unfortunately, all of the above are probably spoken for. So if I were to take a punt on the waivers, one I'd possibly have if you are short anywhere in your sort of your front seven, Al-Qadim Mohammed. I've mentioned him before. The injury to Lewis leaves the Colts a little bit short at DL, and Mohammed has picked up sort of double points in sort of 4 out of the first 8 weeks. So he's not a real outside gamble. Jets on the flip side of results will be buoyed going into this game following, and it was a mirror image, 34-31 win over the Bengals, which I don't think anyone really saw coming prior to the weekend. I've got to say, again, a bit like the Colts, defense impressed. Great goal line stand, just a good team defensive performance.
Yeah.
Great goal line stand in the first half. Stuffed Mixon for a loss on first and goal. Quan Williams got a sack on Burrows on a crucial sort of fourth down play. Top performers, Nathan's man's got to get his usual mentions. Mr. Mosley, top scored with 18 points. All tackles. Once again, he was a busy boy. Quan Williams, on top of that sack, racked up 16 points. Marcus May, had a solid game with 11.5 points. So yeah, as I say, just a good sort of team, team performance on defense. Hidden waiver value for this matchup, Bryce Hall, the young corner. He's had 4 double points games already this season, and this Jets secondary is going to be licking its lips looking at that game tape of Wentz at the weekend. So Bryce Hall would be one. If you're short, in the DBs, he'd definitely be one. Maybe not for the rest of the season, but this, I think, could be a really sort of spot on matchup to slot him in. Summing the game up, I think this is a really fun IDP matchup. There's value on both sides of it. If you've got solid Jets or Colts players, play them. If you've got them on the roster, because neither of this offense is without its issues. Although, you've already mentioned him, Mike White. He looks solid for the Jets. I was impressed. But there is some waiver value out there for both teams as well. I'm leaning towards a Colts home win. They'll be angry after letting that game get away from them. I would hope, I think another good defensive performance, and they'll just be hoping and praying for, some better decision making from their QB at the end of the day. So I'd go for the Colts win on this one.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm with you really, but I'm gonna go Jets just because I really want them to win. I loved it. Loved the weekend. It was great to see, and as you said, it was nice to see them get in that. I think it feels just like a reward for trying so hard, especially from the defense side of things. That was a good result, and yeah, great to see. Right, so Minnesota at Baltimore, I'm onto. So the Ravens are coming off bye week. They should be fit, raring to go for this one. They took a bit of a hiding in week 7, so they'll be keen to get back on the field, get back to winning ways. And they're at home to what is an inconsistent Vikings team, and I expect them to win it. And on the season, it's quite interesting though. What from IDP perspective, looking at the Ravens D. I mean, in the past, the Ravens in previous years they've been full of players, IDP value. This year, not so much. Actually, not at all. It's difficult to even put a case for pretty much any of their players. When you look at the top 100 to top 200 players overall, this I'll just tell you where they rank. So at number 87, the top ranking player for the Ravens is DB Anthony Averett, and he's on 87.5 points. Then comes 131 overall DB Chuck Clark, and he's got 75 points. And then linebacker Patrick Queen at 140 on overall. So really, it just tells you, the Ravens are not a team to target IDP wise for the bigger picture. Maybe week in, week out, which is obviously where we come into it, and we're telling you about matchups and things like that. But as in, they shouldn't really be the base of your team. If they are the base of your team, you're probably not doing very well this year. However, if you have to have a dabble on the Ravens, then the secondary is the place to look. As I mentioned, Anthony Averett, Chuck Clark, and then Marlon Humphrey. They're three of the top 4 scorers in the Ravens. So that's 3 DBs. But all those DBs are probably in play this week just because they are playing the Vikings. You expect the Vikings to use their wide receivers quite a bit, especially if I'm getting real bad feedback on this at the moment, Bren. 1 second, guys. 1 second. Yeah. Sorry about that.
All right. Is that better?
Yeah, I'm still getting. That's better. Sorry, mate. Yeah, cool. So you expect the Vikings wide receivers to be busy, which should mean that the DBs from the Ravens should be busy, especially if the Ravens get into a decent lead. That'll force Kirk to throw the ball more. Flipping it over to the Vikings D, Eric Kendricks and Harrison Smith, they played well in week 8 in a frustrating and disappointing loss to Cooper Rush and the Cowboys. It was infuriating to watch. I stayed up to watch it, and I wish I hadn't put myself through it, especially after a decent start. I thought we looked quite in control of the game, but it just points the game where we just didn't put our foot down when we had the chance to, and yeah, just a bit poor. But going on to players I want to highlight IDP wise from the Vikings, just players that you can possibly pick up. Cam Dantzler at DB is a decent ad. Patrick Peterson is on IR. So I expect Cam Dantzler to do well now. He had a decent rookie season last year. He scored 16.50 points in week 8, which was made up of 7 solo tackles, 2 passes defended. Also, Anthony Barr is back alongside Eric Kendricks, and he's a decent plug-in play at linebacker. In week 6, he had 11 points. Week 7 was his bye week. Week 8, 14.5 points. So he's trending in the right direction. So bad news broke last night that Danielle Hunter will miss the rest of the season with a torn pec, which is devastating news for the Vikings. It'd be interesting on week 9 to see who fills that place. So maybe next week we will have somebody to pick up. But for now, Everson Griffin is the man leading the pass rush, which is concerning. Yeah, very concerning. But to summarize for me, week 9 pickup Cam Dantzler and Anthony Barr from the Vikings, and maybe have a punt on Anthony Averett from the Ravens. For the game result, I expect it to be the Ravens to bounce back with a home win. What do you think, Bren, on that?
Yeah, I'd concur with that. As you said, I mean, we said at the start of the season just how key it was going to be for the Vikings to have a fit Danielle Hunter sort of, leading that offense. Massive blow. So I think that, and the fact that the Ravens, as you say, need to bounce back. I'd go with Baltimore in this one.
Spot on.
Okay, moving swiftly on. Got the Patriots at the Panthers. So, well, the Panthers needed a win at the weekend. They got one over the Falcons. Hardly a classic. Although I have to say, the defense that we've been a bit critical of in recent weeks certainly did an excellent job containing Kyle Pitts, and that kind of, that was one of the keys to the game, really. Special mention, ironically, to the former sort of Patriot, Stefan Gilmour at corner. Only picked up 11.5 points, but he covered Pitts well, and ended up with a late pick to ice the game. Although, it's worth noting that the job on Pitts, some were saying, was made a bit easier by the absence of Calvin Ridley, but Calvin Ridley's been, I think, absent in more ways than one from this Falcons team all year. So I don't think that really sort of flies. But I'm still a little bit concerned about this Panthers defense at the moment. They don't look the unit they were in the sort of the early stage of the season. Although, they did shut out the Falcons fairly comfortably for me. In terms of the Panthers D, from an IDP perspective, I think the safe bets again are at linebacker. Hassan Reddick went over 20 points again, including another sack, but not to be outdone on his return from injury. Shaq Thompson racked up 27 points, including a pick, and he was into sort of double digits on the tackles. For me, this week, I'm not sure I'd be wandering outside my sort of IDP Panthers comfort zone, for want of a better description in this game. Moving over to the Patriots. Okay, so, both teams got the win last week to get them to 4-4, but the Pats win at the Chargers was by far and away a bigger statement victory. And crucially, it was the job that the defense did on Justin Herbert for me. He barely got over 50% in pass completions. Plus they picked him off twice. Although, to be fair, I think that was more on the Chargers than it was, the Patriots defense. And this week, they get to go up against a Sam Darnold offense, assuming he's back from concussion, which he looks like he will be. Who, whilst they might have won on Sunday, they still look a very nervous offense, a bit devoid of ideas. In terms of players to highlight, okay, Matt Judon picked up another sort of 20 plus points last week. He's a given. But having a look at the waiver wire finds, I've stumbled across, for the Pats this week. It's all in the secondary for me, against, as I've said, this sort of shaky Panthers offense. Surely they've got to be worth a look. I mean, Darnold's thrown 8 picks already this season. Kyle Duggar, keep mentioning him. Okay, only picked up 8 points versus the Chargers, but he broke 20 points in the 2 weeks prior to that. He's still out there on some waiver wires. JC Jackson, again, had a quiet week in LA, but he's hit double figures in IDP 5 out of 8 weeks. And finally, Adrian Phillips, as an outsider, finished Sunday with a monster sort of 28.5 points, including 2 picks, 1 for a TD. Although I'd make more of a case for Duggar and Jackson, as they've been more consistent with their numbers this season. Summing the game up, off the back of a great defensive performance, backed up by Mac Jones and the offense showing really good sort of game and clock management, I've got to go with New England this week. The Panthers offense I think they've still got problems. So the Patriots look like they're starting to put it together on both sides of the ball consistently now. Not the most flamboyant, exciting team, but that's not what the Patriots are about. They figure out ways to win games, and they're doing it quite effectively. And they're definitely going to be back in the wild card hunt after this weekend.
Yeah, I got the Pats as well. I think they're starting to get on to a bit of a roll. And that was a big win last week, and I just feel, they could be there. Right, okay, Browns at Bengals for me. Both of these teams coming off week 8 losses, but IDP wise, the DLs on both teams are scoring really well. For the Bengals are an IDP plus dream at this moment in time still. For the Bengals, Trey Hendrickson scored well again, another sack. So did Laren Ogunjobi. He's had 2 very good weeks. And against Baker Mayfield, they will look to add to their sack count. Obviously got Sam Hubbard as well. He's also in play in this one. He's scoring well week in, week out. Flipping it over to secondary, DB, Jesse Bates, he had a great week 8. He scored 20 points, which included an interception. Also, Jermaine Pratt also got an interception at linebacker. The whole Bengals secondary scored well as a unit. I mentioned Bates, but Von Bell scored well. So did Awuzie. They're both decent ads. You won't get Von Bell, but Awuzie you probably will. And he's a good ad for this week. The Bengals had 7 players score over 17 points in week 8, which tells you they are worth a punt, especially against, I'll say it again, against Baker Mayfield. He's not healthy. He's banged up. We know just doesn't look quite right. That was a big loss against the Steelers. The Steelers played it tight and I did exactly what was needed to do to beat them. Mayfield's got sacked 9 times in the last 2 games. So you've got to look at this matchup. Hendrickson, Sam Hubbard, Ogunjobi, those guys against Mayfield is where the points look like coming from to me. Looking at the Browns D, Myles Garrett, he's now on 10.5 sacks for the season. He doesn't look like he's going to slow down. And I wouldn't be surprised if he adds to that. Anthony Walker at linebacker, he's continually consistent. But apart from those two, I'm not really picking up anybody else in this Browns defense. The secondary doesn't have any standout players. I keep saying this, and week in, week out, they seem to put on the same kind of performance where the points are split around. Nobody seems to make get an interception or anything like that. So yeah, it's really difficult to put a case for them. So yeah, I'm going Bengals in this one. I feel that they let me down a little bit last week on a couple of accumulators, so I wasn't really happy with that. But I'm going with them again this week. What do you reckon, Bram?
Yeah, I'm all in on the Bengals for this one for pretty much all the reasons you've touched on. Banged up Baker, had another one of those games. I mean, there was that sort of he was sort of shoved out of bounds and landed sort of rather heavily and sort of bounced back up and tried to make out like he was firing the crowd up, and you're like, nah, you're not. You're still like that. I think that shoulder injury is still an issue. But outside of that as well, you've got you can't pin it all on Baker. I mean, Chubb came back and he's back now, but he didn't really get going in the game. I mean, bloody hell! I mean, I've lost track of how many relatively easy catches Juice Landry dropped. Things. And whilst it was great to see the Jets win, and I did sort of think they deserved it, I think it was a slightly below par performance from Burrows and that Bengals offense. And like you've touched on, the secondary at Cleveland doesn't seem to be doing much, and I think this is a game where Burrows and Chase will be looking to exploit that. So yeah, Bengals for me, definitely.
Oh yeah, I mean, I didn't mention it, but this is the kind of stat game that I would highlight as well. There could be the DB stack from the Bengals is definitely in play for me, and I wouldn't be surprised if you saw those guys at the top of the tree in week 9. So go on then, Bren, where are you off to now, mate?
We're going to Dallas. So Denver coming to the Cowboys.
Damn them Cowboys.
Well, we'll get to them in a minute. But hey, Denver won a game. And albeit over Washington.
Strange that.
Anyway, so the Broncos defense, they played well, I think, over the win over sort of Washington. Despite their offense trying to screw it up a bit like the Colts defense late in the game, but they're still missing some key defensive players. Bradley Chubb, Micah Kaiser, plus they've now lost Von Miller, who's gone to the Rams.
Amazing.
I think the move kind of makes sense for me. I mean, the Broncos had already picked up a 26-year-old Kenny Young. They've now got rid of a 32-year-old Von Miller for a second and third round 22 pick. So given where the Broncos are at the moment, I can kind of see the logic behind the move.
Yeah,
looking to rebuild. Whereas the Rams, they want Von Miller. They want to go now. they're pushing for it this year, whereas the Broncos have gone, yeah,
This is
another one of
it's like a
another one of
fantasy.
those seasons.
It's like a fantasy trade, like
Mm.
when you're in the hunt and you go all in for Christian McCaffrey right now because you're in. You go, and it just feels like that. That's exactly what the Rams are doing. They're
I mean,
going all in right now.
that's the way I see it. They've got a proven player in Von Miller, and it makes a very good defense even better, which is a bit worrying for the rest of us. It also means, going back to the Von Miller trade, you could be looking at, is someone going to step up? You could be looking at the likes of Malik Reed, who's out on the waivers. His projected numbers for next week are already trending up. Following the Von Miller trade, but also coming off the back of the fact that he racked up 26.5 points against Washington, including a couple of sacks. So he's someone that might be worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah.
Elsewhere, Justin Simmons top scored in the secondary, 28.5 points, including a couple of picks. And both he and Kenny Young are still solid picks in this sort of Broncos defense for me. But yeah, I'd have a look at Reed, definitely. However, although the Broncos defense played well, it was against a pretty bang average Washington offense. This week, they need to worry. In fact, I think the whole league needs to worry at the moment, because even without Dak, this Cowboys team just keeps on winning games. And they beat, for me, I know you're a little bit down on the performance. They beat, for me, what has been a rather unlucky, and I still think is a decent Vikings team. And as I say, they did it without Dak Prescott. And this Broncos offense is still a bit of a mess. And off the back of a monster sort of 33-point game, this Micah Parsons fired defense could do some real damage on Sunday for me. Trevon Diggs had a blip. He's not going to bench him. I'd expect him to be back on track on Sunday. On the waivers, I'd have a look at possibly, the likes of Anthony Brown and DB, who picked up 13 points on Sunday. Although, to be fair, I don't know. I've sort of been back and forth over the secondary a little bit outside of Diggs. Teddy Bridgewater's only thrown 5 picks this season, to be fair. So he's not, that susceptible to it. So instead, I'd possibly take a punt on someone like Randy Gregory in the D-line, because, Teddy, although he hasn't thrown many picks, he has been stuffed 22 times this season. So maybe, if you are looking for an outside waiver pick, and you need someone in your DL, maybe this is an ideal time to slot in someone like a Randy Gregory. Summary, I can't see anything other than Dallas win. They're just so good on both sides of the ball. So yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah, same here. I mean, yeah, with Dak's going to be back anyway. Well, they say so. Yeah. But like you said, even if he isn't, I still probably pick him.
Cooper to Cooper.
Cooper. Okay, honestly, it's still a little bit raw. Anyway.
Yeah, let's move on.
Yeah, Bills at Jags. Okay, I quite like that. I quite like this game. As a lot of people know, I'm big on the Bills. They're one of my favorite sort of IDP teams to target, and it's because I played IDP quite a lot, and I like to set my rosters a particular way. One of the reasons is because I like that decent tackle number, which I've talked about, trying to get that tackle floor week in, week out, and the Bills just do it. They do it from their secondary and they do it from their linebackers. It's 4 guys really that I want to target most weeks to talk about them. They are Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, and the linebackers Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano. I probably at this moment in time as well, I'm going to add Taron Johnson to that at this moment. DB, he's one of these guys that against passing teams, he's a bit of an ad. He's really good in coverage. Against the Jags, though, it's a bit difficult to call exactly what Trevor Lawrence is. What his sort of like ethos is at the moment. He's very mixing it up. But this injury to James Robinson is quite an interesting thing to stick into the mix. And, maybe he airs it out a bit more. If he does air it out a bit more, then the DBs are seriously in play. They are ball hawks. The Bills, they're just really good in that secondary. So going on to Week 8, looking at Week 8, Jordan Poyer, he had a crack in Week 8. He scored 26.5 points. It included 9 tackles, a tackle for a loss, a pass defended, and a big interception. But apart from really, it was a bit of a downturn in actual points in Week 8 for the Bills team. They still scored all right, but not like the usual massive scores. So apart from Poyer's big week, the only man really to mention is Mario Addison in the veteran defensive end. He got himself a sack against the Dolphins, which was nice to see. Not so much for Bren. Yeah, so sorry about mentioning that. But yeah, so apart from that, points wise, it wasn't a great week for him, but I expect it to bounce back points wise for all of those players this one. Going over to the Jags. Week 8, DL Josh Allen, he had an absolutely massive day. Top scored overall in IDP Plus. He scored 36.50 points. He sacked Geno Smith twice, and he got to him 4 times in total. He also posted 6 tackles and 4 tackles for a loss. 2019 first-round pick he was, Josh Allen, and he is starting to look really good player. I'd even call him now one of these players that you put him in that top defensive end bracket. It's just consistent from him, and he's really doing some stuff. So Josh Allen, when you maybe put a little ring around him, is somebody to target in next year's drafts, because he still, for a lot of people, will be slightly under the radar for players that don't play IDP that often. Across from Josh Allen, the other DE stands Dwayne Smoot. He got a sack in Week 8. I don't really fancy him to be in play, but I just thought I'd better mention him because he scored quite well. However, one man I really like from the Jags this week is linebacker Miles Jack. He's back. I expect him to be fit. He's looking reasonably healthy again. I expect him to get close or more than the 15 points that he got this week against the Seahawks. So to sum it all up, I like obviously the linebackers from the Bills. I always do. But I like the Bills secondary in this one. And I like Miles Jack from the Jags. But it's a Bills win for me, as in the game. What do you reckon, Bren? You obviously got the Bills, surely.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But as you say, it's nice to look at a game which is, the result is, bordering on a foregone conclusion. But again, it's one of those games from a fantasy perspective. You can find decent value on both sides. So, but yeah, no, I think the Bills just carry on to their division title. So yeah, good. Right, keeping it in the AFC East. Let's talk about the Texans and the Dolphins.
Forget the Texans. Let's just talk about the Dolphins.
No, okay. Well, looking at it as a game, both teams are 1-7.
Houston in the East.
This is
poor old Houston.
1-7, both teams. It's one of those games. You look at it and you go, it could be a basketball score. It could be an absolute car crash, or you just don't know. But I'm leaning towards it being a bit more entertaining than full on sort of 7.
Tyrod's back. Is Tyrod back?
That's the word. Yeah. So
they plan on playing him, do they?
I believe so. Yeah. So that's what all the news coming out of Houston is sort of intimating. But yeah, I think it could be a bit of fun from an IDP perspective as well. I mean, the Texans got blown away by the Rams on Sunday, despite David Mills going a bit mental in the fourth quarter, whilst the Rams were clearly having a nap, or I don't know what happened. Every time I turned around on red zone, they were in the end zone again. So was it 22 points in about 30 seconds? For the Texans, Christian Kirksey, he had a quiet Sunday, but I think this is a good matchup for him. He's had a good season.
I think did he not get injured? I thought he went off for a bit and come back on.
Yeah, I think he's down as questionable at the moment. So yeah. I don't think it's anything too serious. So on the assumption that Kirksey is back, it's a game. I think, as I say, I think it's a good matchup for him against this poor sort of Miami O line. Same goes for Jonathan Greenard as well. The sort of DE picked up 17.5 points, including a sack on Sunday. I'd be sticking with the front seven if you are, looking for anything, or if you've got any sort of Texans players on your roster, because for all Tua's critics this season, a bit like Teddy Bridgewater, they're playing in poor offenses, but like Teddy, he's only thrown 5 picks this season. Okay, yes, I know he missed a portion of the season, but he's not. I think he's a bit less susceptible to throwing sort of cheap picks than maybe he was tail end of last season. The Dolphins. Oh, Jesus. I mean, we just can't have 1 week where we put it together on both sides of the ball. Week 6 and 7, the offense and Tua looked good, but the defense let us down. Sunday against the Bills, the offense just couldn't put anything at all together. But to be fair, I thought the defense, did okay. I thought Howard and Jones in the secondary, whilst they didn't rack up much in the way of IDP, did a good job keeping the likes of, Diggs and some of the other receivers quiet. Yes, okay, Diggs got a rather sort of lazy touchdown towards the end of the game. But I'd fancy both Xavier Howard and Byron Jones to pick up more points against this Texans offense. I'll also be looking at Jerome Baker, who's due to be coming back this week. I think he's a pretty safe bet in a matchup like this. He scores consistent, a bit like Kirksey on the other side. If he's fit, you can play him. Plus, one for me on the waivers, and he's still around there. Christian Wilkins. He's quietly gone about having a decent season. He's already racked up over 100 points this season. Picked up another 19, on Sunday against the Bills. So again, if you're short in that sort of front 7 area, game as a whole, I'm going to go with the Dolphins. They're at home this week, off the back of what I thought was a decent defensive performance on Sunday. They ran out of steam, and the Bills just sort of got away from them towards the end of the game. And let's face it, it's a very good Bills team. And just hope off the back of that defensive performance, Tua can turn in another 300-yard game like he had done in the 2 weeks preceding the game against the Bills. I think even with Tyrod Taylor coming back, as we touched on, for Houston this weekend, I think the Miami defense should have a bit too much. I think even if Taylor comes back, that offense still looks a bit of a mess. Not to say Miami's is anything to write home about, but Devontae Parker had a decent game. If he can get Waddle in the game, and if they can avoid snapping the sodding ball off their own tight end as he's running past, that would be a bonus as well. I couldn't believe that.
So bitter.
I'm going, what are you doing? It's like a whole movie sort of snap. But fingers crossed, the Dolphins get their second win of the season. So providing both sides of the ball decide to turn up and play this week.
Yeah, I've gone Miami. Surely.
Don't say surely.
Don't call me Shirley. Right, where am I? At Atlanta, at New Orleans, Falcons Saints. A cracking divisional matchup, but I don't think it's going to be that close. Right, let's go. I'll talk about the Falcons first. The Falcons linebackers, they're on absolute fire IDP wise. They are, when you're talking about players to target, when you need to think about this when you're in your drafts next season and stuff like that. The linebackers from the Falcons are absolute point monsters. They are tackle. That's what they do. They're just all over the place. So we've got Dion Jones and Foysaid Alukan. You have to keep picking them. You have to keep playing them. And if you're struggling in that position, try and make a trade for one of them. It's the safest trade you probably ever make because they constantly rack them up. Dion Jones is averaging 19.9 points per game currently. Foysaid Alukan, 18.2 points per game currently. So that they are both in the top 10 linebackers on average scoring at this moment in time. So that just sums up how good those guys are. Apart from them, there isn't great deal to talk about really on Falcons wise, but I'm gonna talk about
Ooh.
So yeah, safety Eric Harris. He had a bit of a game. Um, at free safety, he showed up in week 8. If anybody saw it, the hit on Robbie Anderson is enough to make a proper wince. He timed it absolutely. I'm surprised he got back up. He folded like a. If you ever tried carrying a mattress and you know when it splits, and it's a bit like that. Yeah, he scored. So Eric Harris, he scored 15.50 points with 7 tackles and 2 passes defended. But as we said, that's it for me when I'm looking at Falcons IDP. So it's the linebackers, yeah, maybe Eric Harris, but pretty much just the linebackers. So let's move over to the Saints. Now, I'm not going to talk about Demario Davis and the people that we already know about. Let's talk about CJ Gardner-Johnson. People know, if anybody knows about him, he's one of the dirtiest wind-up merchants in the NFL. He's a right pain in the ass. And I can't, when you're playing against him, I don't know how people just,
I think he's the sole reason the league brought in that anti-taunting
tell you what,
penalty this year. So.
He is constant. You watch him. I tell you, you should watch it. You just want to cam on him just to watch it because I think it'd be comedy value. But he's just constant. Anyway, but not just he's good at winding people up. He's getting decent. The last couple of weeks, he's had 2 decent weeks since his bye week. And the matchup for the Falcons is pretty good, especially obviously you mentioned about Ridley being out. It's going to be an interesting one, especially if the Saints get in front, because if Matty Ice is forced to throw, I don't fancy his chances. Gardner-Johnson scored 17.50 points in week 8 against the Bucks, which included him picking off Tom Brady. And like I said, I fancy him against Matty Ice. I'm not going to mention anybody else. Obviously, people know about Marshawn Lattimore, and he's great and all that. Not really somebody that I'm that mad on IDP wise. Great player, but not IDP wise. PJ Williams, he got an IDP touchdown, so I thought I'd better give him a mention. But again, he doesn't get the snap count to make him real relevant. I called it last week. I said big names come up in big games, and I mentioned Cam Jordan. Cam Jordan got himself a sack against Tom Brady. I like it. I like him again in this week. I like Cam, and this is the kind of game that he will absolutely thrive off. So yeah, my picks. So sum it up. Let's keep banging on. Are Falcons linebackers, obviously, DB Eric Harris, and from the Saints, Cam Jordan and DB Gardner-Johnson. That I think you'll be able to get him off the wire if you want him. The Saints for me in this one. Unfortunately, the Falcons looked awful on offense last week. I don't know quite. Pitts was not there. I know the Ridley thing. They looked really poor on offense. Defense was actually all right, but offense, nowhere near it. And that worries me against the Saints. Really does.
Yeah, I think. I mean, obviously with the injury to sort of Jameis at the weekend, and that's him out for the season. Obviously, the Saints are going to lean more heavily than ever on this defense, but I think this is a good matchup for him, as you said, offensively. As I've already touched on, the Panthers shut Pitts out of the game, and really, with no Ridley and sort of not much going on in the ground game.
It's a weird one. It's a weird one QB wise for me. With see, I think like with Winston, I always think he's boom or bust. So I think that teams that are not playing really well have always got a slight outside chance, because if he has such an off day, you have got a chance. But with Taysom Hill, if I take it Taysom Hill is going to be fit and ready to go, then it's going to be quite. I think it'll be quite structured. It'll be run heavy. So those linebackers, God knows what points they could potentially rack up. Those two linebackers
could be a great IDP week
from the Falcons.
The Falcons LBs, but yeah, Saints for me. Falcons have got too many problems on offense, as you said.
Do.
Okay, Raiders at the Giants. So I stuck my neck out last week and tipped the Giants to cause a bit of an upset against the Chiefs, and it was a close game, but it was an awful game. It was just sloppy all round, and really it comes down to the fact that the Chiefs won it because they were a bit less crap than the Giants. That's it was one of those Monday night games which is not going to,
Yeah.
it's not going to live long in the memory. Top performers for New York. It's usual suspects, I'm afraid. Leonard Williams at DL picked up another 20 points, including a sack and a forced fumble. Logan Ryan in the secondary, he went into double figures with 15.5 points, including another forced fumble. I'd say you could start either of them, as they've been, consistent IDP performers all season, if you need to. But outside of that, I'd be swerving any of the other Giants players this week, quite frankly. There's nothing else that leaps off the page at me. Moving over to the Raiders, they're coming off a week's rest following that comprehensive win over the Eagles the week before. I'd be loading heavy on Raiders players this week. I really would, because their defense is going to be looking at that tape from Monday night and thinking, if the Chiefs can be that sloppy and beat this Giants team, we could have an absolute field day. So, we've not really seen any sort of Raider waivers bargains to speak of, but if you've got Corey Littleton, Max Crosby, Denzel Perryman, Yannick Ngakoue, even Jonathan Abram, start them.
Yeah.
And if you do stumble across any of them on the waivers, grab them and play them, basically. But I'm not so sure you will. And if you can stack, as we've said before, this is one of those games. So if you've got a Max Crosby or an Ngakoue, and you can match that up with a Littleton or a Perryman or an Abrams, then again, this is one of those games where you'd be looking to do it. Summary, really, this is quite a simple one for me. Raiders go 6-2, stay top of the AFC West, which I don't think many of us would have been predicting back in August. I mean, a little caveat, because obviously it's broken, since I've done my notes this evening.
Incredible.
The Henry Ruggs story coming out this evening is going to have any impacts on the team. I would hope not. I don't think so, because everyone thought, well,
The Gruden thing,
the Gruden story, and they just came out and played hard, played angry, played as a team. I think you've got an angry team that's sort of gone through the ringer once in the last few weeks, and I think this will just fuel the fire. I could see them absolutely blowing the Giants out of the water this weekend. But yeah, I'd definitely be loading heavy on your Raiders IDP players this week.
Yeah, I'm all in. I'm all in on the Raiders as well. Yeah, like you said about the news. I mean, God, it's incredible. I mean, what's next for the Raiders? They must be thinking, Jesus, every time a news flash goes off, what's next? But yeah, I think they are a great IDP. When we're talking about teams at this moment in time, IDP wise, the Raiders are seriously a team to target. If you're looking to pick somebody up and you're not sure who to go, pick up a Raiders player at this moment in time. It's definitely,
especially against New York.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So Chargers at Philly for me. Right, Chargers. Let's have a look at this. Let's talk about Derwin James. Derwin James, he's having an absolutely great season. On week 8, he was absolutely brilliant. He got 13 tackles, a tackle for a loss, a forced fumble. It got him 23.5 points. And he is absolutely lights out. I mean, that's not somebody that you'd find on the wire or anything like that. If you do, Jesus, can you just send me an invite to your league, please? Because Derwin James should not be on anybody's waiver wire. Somebody that probably is Kazia White at linebacker. He's an interesting one, Kazia White. He's very, when you talk about boom or bust players, Kazia White is like that. It's probably because he's a coverage linebacker, really. That's prominently what he is. So when you're playing him against teams that are throwing the ball a lot, Kazia White often racks up the numbers. He had a good showing in week 8. He got 9 tackles, a tackle for a loss, which is pretty good in that kind of game. when you talk about the games that really favour him, though, it was the monster game that he had in week 6. That was against the Ravens, and as you know, it was the Ravens are seriously Lamar Jackson is seriously airing it out this season. But Jalen Hurts, it could be a similar kind of story, might not be, but it's worth a shot for me because he scored. I think it was 30. I haven't got the figures in front of me, but I think it was 33.5 points that he scored in that week 6, and it's the kind of game that it could happen again. And if it does, it could be a week winner. Apart from that, who else can I mention? DB Nasir Adley, DL Jerry Tillery, not a fan of. They also scored well in week 8. Then certainly not on my wish list, either of them two. But again, they're kind of plug-and-play players. Going over to the Eagles, they had a blowout win in week 8. And for me, it was the best offensive performance. The Lions couldn't get. It was their best defensive performance. The Lions could not get their run game going at all. And it was due to the Eagles constantly being all over them. It was a really good display. If you want to watch a defensive performance that absolutely dominates, watch the tape on that one, because it is a cracking performance by the Eagles, who have not actually been that good or that consistent this season. But that performance was cracking. After not after, but during the game, they absolutely, like I said, they smashed the run game of the Lions, and then it went down to the passing game, and then they seemed to dominate that as well. Josh Sweat, he was all over Jared Goff. He got 25.5 points in IDP plus, and that included two sacks. But for me, watching that performance was a really interesting one. I find Philly really interesting, and I know others do. I'll go on to that in a minute. But talking about the most impressive players of the day, it was TJ Edwards for me. He was absolutely everywhere. We rarely see him used like he was, but it was down to probably Alex Singleton not being there. But he certainly stepped up, and it was great to see. His numbers sort of like speak for themselves. He got 13 tackles, 2 tackles for a loss, a QB hit. He got 26 points on the day. He's on most waiver wires. However, I expect after this performance and a lot of talk on Twitter and a lot of talk on various other social media platforms, I expect him to be snapped up pretty quickly. When you're talking about the Philly linebackers, their usage, talking about the guys on Twitter that I just mentioned, that talking about the usage is quite varied. So you get this kind of feeling at the moment that Philly are looking around. They're looking for somebody to step up, and TJ Edwards really did last week. So you want to watch this space. You might want to give it a week. Well, I don't know whether you can, but as in starting him, pick him up if he's there now. Stash him as such. Give it a week and see what his snap count is and how much work he's getting tackle wise this week, because he could be a really top linebacker if he carries on like that. That was a really good performance, and have a gamble on him. Anybody else? I better quickly mention DL's Milton Williams and Derek Barnett. They had good games. Marcus Epps at DB. He had 9 tackles, pass defended on the week. Yeah. I do. Looking at this game, though. Chargers at Philly. I'm going Eagles. I'm going Eagles after that defensive performance. I think if they can nail it defensively, I know it's against the Lions and people are going, oh yeah, but seriously, they looked in sync and it looked really good. And yeah, I'm going for Eagles, and like I said, I've got my fingers crossed for TJ Edwards. He could be the guy. I'd like to see him be that guy. What do you reckon, bro?
Yeah, I mean, I again stuck my neck out last week and sort of tipped the Lions, and I wasn't alone. I've
No,
listened to a few
me.
other podcasts. People who've been doing this a lot longer than I have. Fancied the Lions, and why did I, opt for the Lions? Well, because that Philly defensive performance against the Raiders, where they just looked completely out of sorts, and yet they've sort of, a week later, and they look like, one of
That
the
was
best
brilliant.
defenses in the league. So, I don't know with the Chargers at the moment. Herbert seems to be having a bit of a blip. It's not quite clicking last couple of weeks the way it sort of had done for, the first sort of, 5 or 6 weeks of the season. I don't think it'll carry on. I think he's too good. But I wouldn't be, I'd be inclined to come down on the Eagles side of it and agree with you on this one if they can put that performance, if they can sort of have back-to-back weeks defensively. And I like Jalen Hurts. I think he's a fun quarterback to watch. So
Yeah,
and he's so good on the ground if he needs to be as well.
just got breaking news that Fletcher Cox will not be traded as well. He is staying in Philly.
Well, that'll be a bonus for him as well. So
Absolutely.
So okay, let's take a punt on the Eagles. Okay, Packers at the Chiefs. Well, I've already had a moan about the Chiefs' performance on the Monday night game. Okay, they won, but they were poor again. They remain third in the division at 4-4. Looking at the defensive side in this matchup, there's not much I like about this Chiefs defense at the moment. Especially against his Packers team on a 7-game win streak, including a big Thursday night win over Arizona. Any Chiefs IDP value in this matchup? I've got to be honest, I'd be swerving the secondary. I wouldn't be looking at the Chiefs DBs in this game personally. Even the likes of the tried and tested Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu, and Jalarius. Oh God, Sneed. This is bloody cold.
Bless you.
Thank you. So the problem for me with their secondary this week is, for a start, it's a team that's not playing well. But you look at the amount of time that Aaron Rodgers throws the ball, and he's only been picked off 3 times all season. So I don't see much value in the DBs for me this week. Although, having said that, he has been sacked 17 times this season. So and that's more than Daniel Jones, just to put it in context, just to have another dig at the Giants. So, for me, if you have to start any sort of Chiefs players this week, then for me, they need to come from the front 7. Willie Gay, linebacker, picked up 20.5 points on Monday, including a pick. Nick Bolton is probably a fairly safe sort of pair of hands there, picked up another 14 points. And if you're looking for something on the waiver wires, it's a player I have mentioned before. Chris Jones is floating around on a couple, possibly due to the fact that he is coming back from injury, but he did look fit on Monday night, which is good news for this Chiefs defense. But really, as far as Kansas go, that's kind of it for me. Packers, on the other hand, are going to be looking forward to this, I think. I'd be looking at the Packers DBs with Mahomes on 9 picks already this season. That's the same as Zach Wilson, for Christ's sake. So that puts Mahomes' performance this season in some sort of context.
When's Zadarius Smith back? Is he due back?
You know what? I don't know. I'll have to check on that.
Find out. No, not yet. Still week 11.
No. Okay. So yeah, given sort of Mahomes' erratic performance so far this season, I'm looking at the likes of Adrian Amos, Darnell Savage. Both had quiet games on Thursday, but if you've got one of them, I'd be starting them against this Chiefs offense this week. An outside option on the waivers, again at DB, Russell Douglas racked up 25.5 points against Arizona. The only problem with that is he's done little else this season, so he's trending up for this weekend. I think because of the way that Mahomes has been playing. So for me, I don't think he's a long-term roster addition, but as we've mentioned before, he could be one of these sort of slot in and drop, week to week waiver moves, because I'm pretty sure he will be out there on a lot of waiver wires. Further forwards, Devonte Campbell, linebacker, picked up 23 points on Thursday. That takes him over 148 points for the season, so he's a must start for me if you've got him on the roster. Elsewhere, there's not enough consistency for me. elsewhere in the sort of the Packers defense, as bad as this Chiefs offense have been, the pass protection around Mahomes, ironically, given the 9 picks, hasn't been sort of too bad. He's not been sacked too many times this season. So yeah. So IDP wise summary, I'd be looking at sort of the value being in the Chiefs sort of front 7, the Allen linebackers, and then the Packers secondary. But it's a Packers win for me. I think the Chiefs have still got lots of problems.
Yeah, I agree. No, I don't. I said I agree. I don't agree. I think do you know what I'm saying this time, right? I'm going to call this. I think this is it. This is it. This is the Chiefs' turning point on their season. They win this, and then we're back to normal Chiefs week in, week out crap. Well, good for them, but crap for the rest of us. I reckon this is the week that it all changes around for him. That's just my call.
Yeah, I think we've all been saying for the last few, it can't continue, and yet
But they're poor.
Then you look at, and you would have had that Monday night game. Go right, come on, you got the Giants at home. This, you should be able to blow them out of the water, and they couldn't do it.
Yeah, but maybe I'm doing some kind of mindset shit where I'm saying that
I tried that with the Lions last week.
Yeah, the minute that you start picking the opposition against the Chiefs, that's when it all changes. So I'm going to say this is the week for the Chiefs.
All right. Well, I'm going to play safe and stick with the Packers.
Right. Where am I? Arizona at San Francisco. Oh, the Cards. They didn't play well in week 8. And offensively, the big playmakers, they didn't show up. Unfortunately for them. IDP wise, JJ Watt is now on IR. And this game is looking like a real tough matchup now for me, for the Cardinals. And it's the kind of game where, talking like we just mentioned about Kansas City against Green Bay, and them looking to pivot on a particular game, change their season. And that could be said in this one for San Francisco. If they beat them, this could really kickstart their season. I think we've got Kittle coming back. I think they're not going to bother with Trey Lance anymore, and they're going to settle with Jimmy G. That means that Elijah Mitchell seems to be running the ball really quite well. It's kind of coming. Is it coming together for 49ers? If it is, then other teams should watch out, because this is somebody that we tipped at the start of the season to have a good season, and they just haven't. So yeah, this is one of those games for me which could kind of go against the stats as such. So if you learned anything from the way to sort of like beat the Cardinals, the Packers, the key is, for me, watching it, it's run the ball, man. Keep running the ball, keep running at them, and keep them off the field. Keep that offense off the field for as long as you can. Run that clock as much as you can. And you know what? The 49ers know this. They'll know this, and they should do it, and they will do it. So expect a heavy run game from the 49ers, and maybe they'll mix it up like they do scheme wise. And I think they'll keep the 49. I think they'll keep Arizona off the field, which I just fancy them. I do fancy them in this. But defensively, let's talk about the players. I've been talking about linebackers from the Cardinals, and I've mentioned about Isaiah Simmons, and I'm a bit big on him, but I need to stop that. I really do, because defensively for the Cardinals, Jordan Hicks, he said we thought he was all going to be traded, and we thought, Jordan Hicks was a thing of the past, all this. He saw 100% of the snaps in week 8, and he has done in previous weeks before that. So he is now at must start week in, week out. You're talking one of the top linebackers, IDP wise, in the game, who we thought was not going to be around anymore for the Cardinals. Now definitely is. He scored 19.5 points in week 8. He had 12 tackles, 1 tackle for a loss. And And when you're talking about teams running the ball more on the Cardinals, it should help with Hicks getting those good numbers week in, week out. So Hicks is a must start, must pick. You ain't going to find him. Maybe trade for him if you want to. Other players, Jalen Thompson, DB, tackled well week 8. Zach Allen, he got a sack and top scored at DL. For the matchup, though, I would still go. I'd still look at the guys that could get a sack. I'd look at Marcus Golden. I'd look at Hicks. Maybe Chandler Jones. He's due another big week 1, and that's it really from Chandler Jones. I know he's been injured, but obviously with JJ Watt out, it's gonna fall on him and Marcus Golden to apply that pressure. That's about it from the Arizona side. Flipping it over to the Niners, Bosa, great game in week 8. He put constant pressure on Justin Fields. Bosa finished with 28.5 points. He top scored for the Niners outright. But the player I want to talk about is DB Quan Williams. This kid makes a massive difference to this 49ers secondary. He was everywhere against the Bears. He scored 17 points, including 7 tackles and 2 tackles for a loss. I really like this kid. Quan Williams. He got injured in week 3 in the loss to the Packers, and it's great to see him back. And he's potentially a really decent pickup off the waiver wire. I'm sure he's there. Like I said, I fancy the Niners in this one. I'm not going to talk about anybody else that really stands out. So yeah, I fancy the Niners in this one, and it'll get their season back on track. And like I said, pick up Quan Williams if you can. Brendo.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know this one. I mean, we talked about the Niners briefly before we sort of came on air, and I mean that's about as good as good an offensive performance as we've seen from the Niners in a long time. Jimmy G in particular, I thought had an outstanding game. Mitchell ran well. I mean, it was funny. You talk about Nick Bosa. I mean, he's so key to that defense. I mean, he went down with what looked like a bit of an injury at one stage, and oh my God, must have been. I mean, it looked like several Niners fans were going to have coronaries in the stand when he sort of didn't get it. He was a bit slow getting to his feet. And that's our season over. But I don't know. I mean, part of me thinks, the Cards will be looking to bounce back, but I'm inclined to agree. I think the Niners looks, they look good, and like you say, if they can keep the ball on the ground, I
just feel I feel you know what my views are on the Cardinals anyway. As in, my core views are, look, I respected them for playing well this season, and they have been playing well. But I just feel that the core, the team element is still lacking slightly. JJ Watt now on IR. Just feel the wheels can come off quite quickly on that kind of team that they might be. Mind you, they might prove us wrong. Kyler Murray is not a, he's a top player, and the thing is he can pull it out of the bag, and it's there. The Niners are still, they're by far not a consistently good side. So yeah, but I'm going for him.
Yeah,
go on then,
let's take a punt on the Niners, but it'll be a good game anyway. Right, last one for me this week: Titans at the Rams. So another great game, in prospect, but I feel it could be a little bit lopsided from an IDP perspective. Against the Colts, there were some standout IDP performances from the Titans. Harold Landry, linebacker, had another 20-plus point game, including a sack and a forced fumble. Elsewhere at linebacker, David Long had another good game, 17 points. And then in secondary, I think top scorer for him this week, Kevin Byard, with 21 points, including that game-winning pick. But I'm not sure I'd play any of them this week, even Landry. As good as he has been, I'd possibly even consider benching him this week.
Really?
Why? Well, it's a bit left field, but Stafford's only been sacked 7 times this season, and he's only thrown 4 picks. So, we're looking at, yes, okay, Landry's had a good season. There is some value that, and there have been some good sort of IDP performances in recent weeks from this Titans defense. But again, I'm trying to look at it from a one-off matchup perspective, week to week. And let's be honest, the Titans picks over the Colts in the fourth quarter and overtime. I mean, they were really Christmas presents from Carson Wentz. I mean, there's no other way of describing it. That was not, some elaborate defensive scheme that rocked up and ripped the ball out of the air. That was just bad decision making by the QB. So I'd possibly completely, as good as I think the matchup could be, I'm a bit sketchy about any of the defensive players from the Titans this week, simply because of how well protected Stafford is and how little he turns the ball over. Even when he's had some mediocre games recently, he's not been liable to making too many silly mistakes. Flipping over to the Rams, okay, on the face of it, they're facing a Titans team that's 6-2 and comfortably top of the division, but it's a crap division. I mean, let's not beat about the bush. That AFC South is just bang average outside of the Titans. And crucially, the Rams defense, turning it on its head, are going to be facing the second most sacked QB in the league. He's also thrown 7 picks this season for good measure. So I'm not even going to review the numbers against the Texans for the Rams, because it was just a complete cakewalk. I mean, the only surprise was that the Rams gifted them 22 points so easily in the game. So for me this week, a bit like I touched on with the Raiders game, I'm not going to drill down too much into the stats, because, if you've got, you just start your usual suspects for me in this game against this Titans offense. So, if you've got your Aaron Donalds or your Leonard Floyds up front, and you can double them up again with a Jordan Fuller, a Jalen Ramsey, or a Taylor Rapp, who's someone you've mentioned in recent weeks as, stacking in this Rams defense. That's what I'd be looking to do definitely this week. So pretty quick and easy, this one. Summary, Rams to win. I'm not saying it's going to be a walk in the park, but I do think there's a bigger golfing class than the 7-1, 6-2 records would suggest, especially now with Derrick Henry out of action. I mean, that's kind of.
I thought you weren't gonna mention it. I was like,
No,
my life.
No, I thought I don't want people thinking I don't do my own work. But I mean, the Henry miss it just piles even more pressure on Tannehill. All the more reason for stacking up on these Rams players, because it's all going to be about Tannehill trying to drive the team down the field. And like I said, second most sacked QB in the league. I can see the Rams getting to him, and I can see him, turning the ball over and a couple of picks as well. So all Rams in this one from IDP.
See, it's really interesting when you're talking about Tannehill, and when the huge sack count come when he was missing AJ Brown, Julio Jones. He had no wide receivers apart from people that we hadn't really heard of. And obviously that's the pass rush side of things, and he panics. It'd be really interesting now with Derrick Henry not being there to see exactly the impact, whether it smashes the sack count through the roof again.
Yeah, I think he's still a decent quarterback. He's not become a bad player, in the first 8 weeks of this season.
But this is absolutely incredible for the Titans. Out of everybody, every team in the league, you look at what their ethos is, and the minute that you say the Titans is Derrick Henry, they come hand in hand. You say Titans, Derrick Henry's the man. And to take him out of the equation is something that I think everybody's been saying, oh, well, the time will come, but hang on, he keeps going. And now he's injured. I know this. Actually, do you know what? This injury might prolong his career. This is the kind of fucked up injury when you look at it and go, it's going to take him out probably towards the playoffs if they make it, but it's going to be seriously difficult. And do you know what? This is the worst game on paper that you could come up against. I mean, I think Rams going to go mad.
You're right. I mean, it's something that any number of pundits have talked. I mean, the workload has been put on Henry's shoulders, season in, season out. The break may do him some good. They'll win the division. They'll go into the postseason, and if he's back, but to take him out of the equation, and whilst Tannehill maybe has got some of the offensive weapons back to look at, I don't think he gets an awful. He's not afforded a great amount of pass protection from that O-line.
This could be one of those weird kind of bet things where you just go, hang on, now's the time to lump all the money on the Titans. When their odds drop out through the, you know what I mean? And you just lump it on them and go, right, Henry's back in the playoffs. You couldn't write it, or could you?
Well, I don't know. If you want to lend me £100, I'll pop down the bookies and stick it on the Titans.
You'll have to ask Murph if he's got any left over from the ice move. Right. Right.
So Rams win, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not even picking. That's just silly. Right. Okay. Monday Night Football. Chicago at the Steelers. Wow. TJ Watt. 1.5 more sacks. 25.5 points he got. The guy's just like different gravy from an IDP perspective. Just absolutely awesome week in, week out. The performance from the Steelers against the Browns was a gritty one. It was exactly what they needed to do to get in, get the win, get out. Chris Wormley at DL, he got a sack. Joe Schobert had a decent tackle count that week. Justin Fields had actually a really good game against the 49ers. But I really, really worry for him in this one. Really worry for him. TJ Watt will fancy adding to his sack count. And if the Bears O-line does not hold up, I expect him, Cam Hayward, to do some absolute damage. It could be a big defensive point or hole for the Steelers. I expect the Bears to run the ball heavily. They've been doing it all season. I don't think that's going to change in this game. But if the pressure gets to Fields, then there's going to be picks, sacks. They're all going to be thrown into the mix for good measure. So with that in mind, for me, like I said, TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Minka Fitzpatrick in the secondary, Cam Sutton, Terrell Edmonds. I think they're all in play. I would be looking at them. Flipping it over the other side every week. This is boring. It's really boring talking about the Bears. I'm really fed up with it. Can we just start taking them off the list?
Or just stop referring to them as the Bears defense and just name the usual two.
It's just exactly. Well, actually, Roquan Smith had a quiet week. Khalil Mack, I didn't even look at his numbers, but he must have had a quiet week as well. So Roquan Smith only 6 tackles for him this week. But they're still just the two. I still quite like Jalen Johnson, but very slim. It's very slim pickings IDP wise. It's absolutely shocking when you look at points wise and players to pick up. So for me, there's not really much point in talking about him. I would, like I said, in this game, if you're going anywhere, you're going Steelers. You're looking at that secondary. Probably, if you you're not going to get TJ Watt. You've either got him or you haven't. Cam Hayward might be around. He might be around. And he's definitely in play for this week. But yeah, that's kind of it. I fancy the Steelers massively in this one. They know how to play it, and they'll win it. So yeah, that's it. We're wrapped up, Bren.
Yeah, I mean it's. There were a couple of, just very quickly about the. I mean, I'm just checking. I thought there was Khalil Mack's looking like he's probably going to be out Monday again because he's still suffering with his foot injury. So again, that just reinforces the argument for the Steelers in this game. But the Steelers, as you say, gritty performance against the Browns, but there was some blind things and some ridiculous things in that game. I mean, Boswell, the kicker, getting drilled, which left him without a place kicking for the rest of the game.
Fucking bizarre.
Absolutely ruined by that the Browns. And then that one-handed sort of, tackle from TJ Watt while he's grappling with the guard or the tackle, just reach behind him and grab the shoulder pad. And I mean, that's just, you shouldn't be able to do that. I mean, he's just different class.
He is a different class. I mean, I know talking about TJ Watt, a lot of people are in the fantasy world are not massive fans because obviously he's an outside linebacker as he's classed as, and in previous sort of like scoring systems, he wasn't really relevant. You never got too much for sacks. And it was all about the tackle count, and he didn't have the greatest tackle floor, so he wasn't really relevant. But once you bring the sacks into it, quarterback pressures, all that kind of stuff, pass defender, he attack for a loss. The guy is just he's a wrecking machine. I think a lot of it is down to Cam Hayward. I really do. I think he's a problem. He's a problem for most teams, and it just lends itself to TJ Watt being TJ Watt, but.
Yeah, so
Steelers
win Monday night.
What picks have you got? What picks you got this week?
So just quick recap. If you're looking to pick someone up, as I said, I'm big on the Pats secondary this week, so I keep banging on about it. I think we're both still surprised to find the likes of Carl Duggar out there, but if you can't find him, again with this week's matchup against the Panthers, I'll be looking at a JC Jackson if he's out there, and Bryce Hall, corner at the Jets. I think would be a good shout to slot in this week.
Yeah.
So, anyone else you want to throw in?
Well, like I mentioned Quan Williams at DB at the Niners. Like I said, I'm raving about him. Obviously, Gardner Johnson, mentioned him just for his gobbiness, but no, he's seriously in play. The kid's seriously in play. I'm trying to think who else. Who else am I really looking at? It's a bit of a sketchy old. You get into this time of the season. There isn't a great deal on waivers, but yeah.
I'd be surprised at the number of injuries we're suffering at the moment.
Yeah, the TJ Edwards thing for Philly. I think Philly are really interested at the moment. Like, I seem to spend a lot of time talking on Twitter, just generally, I think it's because it's fun, because at this moment in time, nobody really knows what the hell could happen there. I don't think they're going to stick with Singleton. I just don't think that. I don't think it looks or feels right. It was a bit like Dallas at the start of the season and preseason. That's where everybody was trying to figure out what the linebackers were going to look like.
Yeah, suddenly talked about a lot.
Yeah, it's like now Philly. That's where it is at this moment in time. We don't quite know if they don't seem happy or they haven't seemed happy, and that was a really good performance against the Lions. So it'd be really interesting to see how they move forward. So right, guys, that's pretty much it for this week. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, keep rushing.
Yeah, see you next week.